Utah Republicans really do not want to talk about all of the problems they had during their presidential preference vote at their neighborhood caucus meetings back in March. I'm Brian Schott, an independent journalist covering politics here in Utah. You can subscribe to my work at utahpoliticalwatch.news. On Wednesday, the Government Operations Interim Committee was scheduled to hold a hearing to discuss the problems that Utah Republicans had when they held their presidential preference vote at their neighborhood caucus meetings back in March. Now, you may remember that there were all sorts of problems during those meetings. They had technological issues, which caused problems with registration. They waited in lines for hours. There were problems with the voting, which delayed the results. Democrats, they had their primary on the same day, but it was a primary run by the state. So all the voting was done by mail. But for Republicans, you had to show up in person for the most part at these caucus meetings, and they did that to try and boost attendance. Well, that's not what happened. Only about 9% of the state's registered Republicans, I think it was closer to 9.5% of the state's registered Republican voters, showed up to these caucus meetings and cast a vote in that presidential poll, which Donald Trump won. So fast forward to today. The Government Operations Committee was set to hold a hearing to discuss the problems arising from that presidential vote. There were people who said they were disenfranchised if you were working, if you didn't have transportation there, if you had childcare issues, if you were elderly. A lot of people said they just couldn't participate because they couldn't go in person. So they were going to discuss what happened and ways to make it better. This was the second attempt at holding a hearing on this presidential vote. Legislative leaders previously stepped in and got it knocked off the agenda, but it did make the agenda today. That was until the meeting started, and at the last minute, a lot of the Republicans on the committee voted to remove it from the agenda. One of their chief objections were that the materials for the meeting, including thousands of comments and complaints about what happened, were too prejudicial to the caucus system. The caucus system is near and dear to the hearts of a lot of Republican lawmakers because that's the reason why they are up on the Hill. They only have to appeal to a small number of voters in order to get on the primary ballot or to keep their seat in many cases. And a lot of their objection was based on the fact that this could paint the caucus system in a negative light, and that's not the discussion that they wanted to have on Wednesday. The current that is flowing underneath all of this is Amendment D, the proposed constitutional amendment that would essentially give lawmakers the right to repeal any ballot initiative that's passed by voters. And there is already a proposed ballot initiative in the works that would get rid of the caucus system in favor of a direct primary. And there's a lot of lawmakers who don't want to see that happen. In fact, they would like to get rid of the signature path so that the caucus system is the only way that candidates can get on the ballot. And they just felt that having this hearing today was just too big of a risk to that system. So that's why they knocked it off of the agenda. It's unclear whether there will even be another attempt to try and bring up the problems, which were legitimate problems, in the future. My guess is they're probably not.